people in Israel. We're trying to find new ways to be hopeful, I would say. And I think that Aravrit provides this alternative narrative of seeing what's around us and perhaps rediscovering hope in certain aspects. And I think in aspects that are less than government or, any political party that says something about you, but more of a grassroots movement.
What fuels a multi-passionate life? I'm Jessica Wan, and in this podcast, I interview people who straddle two completely different worlds. I call them Ampersands, and we are collectively designing the Ampersand Manifesto. I'm delighted to be talking again with Liron Lavi Turkenich, typeface designer and productivity expert, and a self-described multi-passionate. Since graduating from the University of Reading with a master's degree in typeface design, Liron has been designing custom multilingual typefaces for global companies specializing in Hebrew. She is the founder of Aravrit, a hybrid writing system that merges Hebrew and Arabic, and has received wide recognition for its ingenuity and scope. She's spoken at TedX Vienna, South by Southwest, London Design Museum, and more. As a productivity expert, Liron writes and speaks about visual productivity, a system she created for visual processors to help navigate through the personal and work overwhelm of modern life. Liron, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here again.
We've gotten to know each other through a wonderful leadership accelerator program called the Wise Women's Council. I always think of you as Liron calling in from Haifa, Israel. Haifa is where you grew up and where you're now raising your own family. How has Haifa shaped you as a designer?
I think that I always felt that Haifa is my home base, my roots, and it was a really safe place to travel from and to come back to. So I did a lot of traveling as a child, and still I do a lot of traveling, but returning to Haifa with this really specific scenery of green and nature and the sea is always just heart expanding for me. And I think that also living in a city that is semi-city, I would say, because it is a city with lots of, traffic lights and everything you expect a city to be. But we live really close, like a 1-minute walk from the forest, from nature. So it's this mix of, serene and business of a city. And that's a lovely place to be in.
When did you start to have an interest in typeface design?
If I think back, I was interested in letters and communication with letters as a very young child. I remember myself writing with letter set, writing words, lyrics from songs on my closet in my bedroom. And I was just surrounded with words and surrounded myself with letters. I used to draw in my diary or in my journal when I was in school for years. Only when I graduated, my teacher told me, "Oh, you've got blue eyes. I've never seen your eyes because you were always drawing letters in your journal." So, but things didn't really click that I like letters and that this is a way of life for me, just until I started studying visual communication in my undergrad. So this was the moment that everything clicked, because I understood that there is such a profession called typeface design and typography, the art of letters. That was a real huge click for me.
You invented Aravrit in a quest to connect. And as you say in your TEDx talk, to, quote, make two parallel lines or lives meet. Aravrit has become more than a writing system. It's become a movement and a symbol of unity. Where are you now in the journey for Aravrit?
Well, I am a decade in, so a lot have shifted. I still love this project. It is, it's my life's mission. But I love seeing how it evolves and how I evolve in it. And to be completely honest, this is like a marriage. I'm just now renewing my vows with Aravrit and learning also how I'm changing and how it should change and shift and, grow maybe a bit differently. Exactly in these days, I'm discovering this and thinking about this and contemplating a lot on where it should go, how it should expand, should it expand, maybe it should narrow. All these thoughts are, well, they're expected after a decade into a project. But if I think back, I think the project itself is very organic. It grows and it shifts, monthly even. That's really exciting to see, where I'll be with it in 6 months, for instance.
So many of our listeners speak English and possibly other languages. I myself do not speak Hebrew or Arabic. What is the significance of connecting these two languages?
Well, I can answer it in, a personal level and a national level maybe. But as a personal level, and this is what's the most important for me to begin with, is that this was actually a notion of ignoring and rediscovering something that's been around me for my whole life. Because in Haifa, there are people who speak Hebrew as their native tongue and people who speak Arabic. And I've never learned Arabic, and it actually never bothered me. And this is the part where I'm talking about these parallel lines, because I used to say that Haifa is a city of coexistence, but actually it's not really coexistence, but more of parallel existence. And, by understanding what's happening around me and stopping to ignore one whole script and, culture, people, language, and ideas, I think that this is where it starts from for me. And then people start resonating with it. And I also think that are less than government or, any political party that says something about you, but more of a grassroots movement, actually.
Yeah, it's really about the people and your community.
Exactly. And how everyone connects to it. And people can connect to it in so many angles and always these different prisms that I discover every time I give a talk. People are coming up to me later with different ideas that they have or different ways that it touches their lives.
At the Expo 2020 Dubai, a huge Aravrit sculpture with the words "Towards Tomorrow" was unveiled at the Israeli pavilion. What did this mean for you?
Oh, this was such a beautiful moment, because when I was designing it, I was designing on a 15-inch screen in 2D, and I was told that this is for Dubai, and at that time there were no, any peace treaties between Israel and Dubai and the Emirates. And I knew that I'm actually designing something in a very small scale to be displayed in a place that I will never set foot in. And when it was actually possible to go to Dubai, I couldn't believe that I'm seeing this. First of all, I've never seen Aravrit in such a huge scale. And when I was designing, I was preparing. It was so hard for me to imagine something that big and that impactful also. It's not about me and ignoring signs in my hometown. Now it's about the world. And it's about how open and welcoming we are. And a lot of people who have nothing to do with Hebrew or Arabic could still see this huge sculpture and interact with it in several different ways. That was very meaningful for me.
You talked about Aravrit as kind of like a marriage, and I was thinking about it as kind of a baby. And you have 3 human children, a spouse, at least one dog, maybe more.
One dog.
How has your family and a growing family, especially in this last decade, added to the multi-passionate nature of your life?
I think that when we decided to have a family, we decided very mindfully that our children will fit in with our lifestyle, with traveling, with career. And we are doing it still. So we're traveling a lot with them and we're doing a lot of things. But I will also say that this they are teaching me a lot about how to slow down. So I always talk about this multi-passionate part of me as a fire growing, and there is absolutely no way to shut it down or to turn it off even. And when I'm with my kids, I really have no option. So we were on the carpet, we're playing something. I can dream all the dreams, I can have all the ideas, but I cannot act on them. So it really does teach me how to be a bit more slow, which is something I very much crave for.
Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about productivity. How do you think about your work as a designer and as a productivity expert? What distinctions do you make between them, and where do you see overlap?
I think I came into productivity by necessity. And I'm speaking of productivity as, as a code word, because I don't think that productive is, producing a lot. I mean, a very mindful productivity, basically knowing where you're headed and not being overloaded, just mentally overloaded with things, and how to get to where you want to get. So it did start as a necessity, because apart from type design and Aravrit, I do a lot of other things. And I started just trying to figure out when I'm working on what, how I'm dividing my time, how I'm reflecting and seeing that I'm actually happy with how my days go. And I started reading so much, so many books, so many articles. And as a visual person, I started feeling that it's very hard to comprehend all the texts. And I started realizing that I'm actually sketching and drawing a lot of diagrams for myself, to help me visually see what's happening. So I think that as a designer, I have this will to make sense of texts and of content, make sense of it in a visual way so people can understand it. Maybe even like, let's imagine a logo that you see for a company. By just looking at the logo, you understand a lot about the company. So by seeing a diagram or a system, it's very easy for you to understand what else are you expecting to do? How did your day go? So this is how I started with it. And I started seeing that by writing about it and talking about it and giving workshops, people started really telling me that it helps them with things that they didn't think that they could do before. So that was a really nice way to connect design and productivity.
Where are you in your journey now with visual productivity as one of your projects, and moving forward into really a time where I think a lot of people need this type of framework to thrive in their work?
I'm now in the middle of working on two separate projects within visual productivity. And I will say that a lot of the material is in Hebrew and currently is being translated, because I understood from a lot of my friends and colleagues that they're interested in reading that too. That's maybe, the balance between local and international. But I do have two projects or two streams. And one of them it's called, well, I don't have the formal name, but something about the compartments, the baskets that we put everything we have. And the fact that most of us don't have a visual map for where we put all the incoming stuff in our lives. Once we have a map, that map doesn't change much. The input, or let's even call this laundry baskets. It doesn't really matter what you put in there, but as long as you know that this basket is for this and this basket is for that, that's super helpful. And looking at the frameworks and the blueprints of people online, it doesn't really apply to everyone. So this map really needs to be very personal to anyone. You have to know exactly what your baskets are, and they will be very different from mine for sure. So just finding a place for everything and organizing it visually is one thing. And the other is how to make a project come to life, how to make a dream come to life and make a project real by working visually on your systems and milestones and so on.
I think a lot of this could be applicable to ampersands for sure.
Exactly. I think that maybe the hardest challenge for me as an ampersand, as I learned from you, is knowing how to reduce my guilt to a minimum. So when I'm working on one thing, not to be so guilty of not working on the other things. This is such a work in progress for me. It's not easy, I will say. While I'm working on one project, what happens to the other 8? Why are they not getting attention?
Yeah, what have you found that has helped you along the way with not feeling the guilt as much?
I'm doing a lot of reflections, a lot of visual reflections as well. I'm doing a lot of reflections of what I've achieved, a lot of that, because I always tend to think that I didn't do as much as I hoped, or that I'm thinking about the 8 projects that I didn't touch, and not about the one project that I did make progress in. So a lot of working visually on that. I have an exercise that I do for myself, which is called my plate, and I load all the brain dump, all the stuff I have to do, and I put it on the plate. I basically write it down on an elliptical form, and then I clear my plate and start removing things. So I have all these exercises for myself of both reflecting and knowing how much I did accomplish and making myself feel better, because most of us do accomplish things, no matter how we feel about it. And the other is really seeing, the full picture, what's on my plate right now.
Yeah. And for multi-passionate people, there tends to be a lot that is colorful and diverse and different, right? Let's take a moment to pause and reflect. What's on your plate at the moment? Outside of hosting this podcast, I partner with leaders in the workplace as they rise up. Perhaps you've gotten a promotion, landed a new role, or taken on a lot more responsibility, and you need a trusted sounding board to support you as you support your team. I coach individuals and leadership teams to rise to the challenge with my Ampersand blend of analytical and creative. If any of this intrigues you, reach out to me at jessicawan.com. Now, back to the show. So along with being a typeface designer and having a family and being a productivity expert, you are currently working on a book project, printing and publishing your version of the Haggadah, a Jewish traditional cultural book for Passover for families. How did this project come to be?
Oh, well, right now, as we speak, there are 3,000 copies of the book in my basement. Some are going for pre-sale, for pre-orders, and some are just, we're working on promoting and marketing this. This project is another example for another business that just happened out of a very, a moment, a spark of an idea of seeing, there's a gap in the market. There is this Haggadah book is a traditional book, but you don't have to be religious. It's very cultural book in Israel for the holiday of Passover. And I just realized that there is no actual good book, like a children's book that is fully illustrated for kids. And this spark just made me immediately, that fire that we spoke about. I called a friend from school and I told her, hey, do you want to be my co-founder? And she said, well, yeah, sure. And we approached an illustrator and we've been working on it for 4 years, on and off. And this is also, thinking about on and off of ampersands, we always have this part that one of our project is on the back burner. And well, we have to try and be okay with that. The Haggadah was on the back burner for months, and then it returned, and then it went back to the back burner. And now it's finally out. So it just shows me and my colleagues that even though it did take 4 years, it did come to life at the end. So it doesn't really matter how long it takes. It's just the thing that it does, get to a completion at some point. That's such a huge satisfaction.
Congratulations. I'm now picturing all these stacks of books and boxes in your basement.
Yes, there are a lot, I would say.
It will be so exciting to get those out there.
Yeah, it is very exciting. It's nice to see a finished product, I'll have to say, because in Aravrit, there is no finished product, actually. This venture will go on, I hope, for as long as I live. And this book is, it's out. And that's it. So that's nice to have multiple projects with different outcomes in my life.
You are also very active in the design community. For several years, you've organized and curated a conference called A-Type I. It's an international typeface conference, and you've also co-run the mentorship program on the International Alphabets Network, which supports women and non-binary people in the field. What have you learned from your community involvement?
Well, right now, we just literally 2 days ago, we opened our 6th or 7th cohort of the mentorship program. And I think that basically community and the type design community is another form of Aravrit for me. It's another form of connecting people through letters. The thing we all love is is letters and type, and this is what connects us together. So this is what connects the mentors and the mentees. This is what connects all the audience of that conference, our interest for that. So just seeing how there are so many people who are interested in basically every niche and working with that and trying to make an impact, trying to make the industry better, trying to change lives of people who can't afford formal type design education, and having amazing mentors, professionals in our field give their time for free to guide these people. That's just so nice.
Liron, you live life in a way that is so inspiring, very much following your passions, your spark, that fire inside you. What advice do you have for people who are pursuing or thinking of pursuing the Ampersand life?
I think that if they are thinking to pursue it, they really don't have any other choice. If you are like this, then you are like this. And if you are hesitating, then it's probably fear because you are like this. And I would, maybe my advice for people who do feel that it's burning in them is try to start the other thing very small, very tiny. You don't have to open a company, another company. You can just start by writing something. You can start by consulting to someone. It doesn't have to be a huge transition. You don't have to split your life in half. You can still be doing your main thing for 95% of the time and just allocate this, 5% to this thing that's burning in you. And then I think that with time, these things start to find their own balance for you. It doesn't have to be 50-50 balance. It doesn't have to be 50-50 ever, actually. And you will find your balance in it if that's something that's really true to you. And if someone is listening and they are just not understanding what this Ampersand thing is, I don't know, I think that maybe something in them does want to discover more. So I would try to find this tiny, tiny, tiny pebble that can start as something new.
A pebble that gets ignited and leads to a spark. I recently rewatched your TEDx talk, and your quote at the end really stood out to me. You said, training our mindsets to accept two things that seemingly clash and putting them together creates a whole that is so much bigger than the sum of its parts. And I immediately thought, oh my goodness, this is something that should be in the Ampersand manifesto. What else do you think should be in the Ampersand manifesto?
I would say that the love for learning is something that's really, really true for Ampersand, because when you have two things, or at least two things that you're doing, you have such steep learning curves. You have to start learning so many new things. If someone who does just one thing will have one learning curve, you would have several. And you really have to be okay with sitting in that discomfort of being a newbie and not really knowing what you're doing. You have to be okay with that. So I think that's also something that's maybe, kind of a characteristics of the Ampersands.
Liron, it's been such a pleasure talking with you today. Folks, you can check out Liron's work at www.lironlavi.com, or you can follow her on Instagram. There's two handles. There is Liron Lav and Aravrit, and we'll link to these as well as the TEDx talk in the show notes. If you liked this show, hit like, subscribe, and share with your friends and fellow Ampersands. I had a chance to listen back on my conversation with Liron. Here are a few key takeaways that came up for me. 1, I am so inspired by the way Liron approaches her work, full of fire and passion, but also with the idea that starting small is perfectly okay. To hear that the Haggadah book project has been 4 years in the making, sometimes moving from the front burner to the back burner and back again, that really gives me hope that the many projects I want to accomplish in my life will happen over time. 2, collaboration is a theme that came up again and again throughout Liron's different projects. Some people might have seen Aravrit as the completion of a project, but it actually seems like creating the typeface was just the beginning. The existence of Aravrit has sparked so many conversations at talks and workshops, museums, expos, and on social media. Aravrit is a collaboration with the world that keeps changing and adapting a decade in. 3. I really resonated with what Liron said about parenthood forcing you to slow down. And over time, I've come to realize that this is not a negative thing. Having a child forced me to really look at and understand the pace that I was operating at before. I've always been busy, I've always moved quickly, and I've always juggled a lot of different things. In a way, becoming a parent showed me another way of being in this world that is just as valuable. I believe we can be both, to have a naturally busy and curious nature, and to be fully present in the moment. For Ampersand parents, it's a new opportunity and something that we're constantly working on.
I can say, though, that I brought my 3 kids to see it because I was, trying to make them proud of their mom, and they couldn't care less, honestly. They were looking at it, they were like, yeah, cool, where are the snacks? So I got one photo of them, which hopefully they'll see in a few years and be happy with.